Carl is always trying to do something, either getting to the falls or saving Kevin, Doug, and Russell. There is no reason to show as much of the house journey as was shown. If the camera had cut directly from takeoff to landing and then shown that Russell had been hiding, it would have been pretty much the same for the plot. The theme is that having new adventures is more fulfilling than simply completing your old ones. Once upon a time, there was a man named Carl. Every day he led a very boring life, wondering what happened to the dreams of his younger self. One day, he is forced to move into a retirement community. Because of that, he flies his house to South America. Once upon a time, there was a man named Carl. Every day he walked his floating house toward Paradise Falls. One day he meets Charles Muntz. Because of that, well, the next major plot development is him finding out that Muntz is evil, but that would be much better as an until finally statement rather than a because of that statement. Doug isn't really relevant to the main plot of the film. I feel like Kevin would be enough motivation for Carl and Russell, and during the final battle, Doug doesn't do anything that Carl and Russell can't do. The only way that Doug advances the plot is that his tracking device allows Muntz to find Carl, Russell, and Kevin, but even that is easily rewritable, as we see later that Muntz has an air force, which he could easily order to search for Kevin, especially since the house is very obvious. Carl desires adventure, and he gets to go on an adventure. Carl gets to be an adventurer and fulfill Ellie's wishes. He didn't have to sacrifice anything to get these. The initial version of this film was set in a floating city on an alien planet, which is obviously completely different from the final version. When Carl and Russell land at Paradise Falls, they get stuck on the wrong side and need to walk to the correct side. But why would they need to do that? Carl has already sacrificed everything to get there, and he would be able to look at the falls from the side that he landed on. Pete Docter originally conceived the story because as a child he often found himself escaping the human world into his own imagination. As I explained in point 8, the final version of this film had very little in common with the original version. In the original version of the film, Carl had no goals for once he got into the sky. This was changed so that he would still undergo character development, and so that he would be stuck with Russell. The characters undergo very frequent changes in opinion. In the montage of Carl and Ellie, we see that they find out that they can't have a child. However, is there any reason that they can't adopt a child? In fact, I think that they would prefer to adopt, since they could skip the first few years of the child's life and continue to live their own lives in the same way. Carl gets angry as soon as he sees that Russell can't climb the hose. However, how could he not have thought of using the hose to pull the house down to the ground? And why is Russell so concerned about Doug and Kevin? After he and Carl get the house to the other side of the falls, Russell can spend as much time looking for Doug and Kevin as he wants. As I explained in point 10, the original idea behind the story stemmed from Pete Docter wishing that he had the ability to escape social situations like Carl escaped the city where he lived. Carl's desire to take the house journey is actually possible to understand. as he feels like this is his only hope to do what he dreamed of, even though he won't be able to live at Paradise Falls for more than a week. This movie has no stakes for the following reasons. A. Carl and Russell complete their house journey to South America, which should take at least 1 week in a house without any water or electricity, and without the expectation of having either of those things at Paradise Falls. B. We see an overhead shot of Paradise Falls, which looks like it is around 10 kilometers from where Carl and Russell landed, and they can walk along the ridge for the entire journey. It would take a normal person around 2 hours to walk that distance, but since Carl is an old man and Russell is an out-of-shape kid, and they are towing a house, let's assume that they walk at 1/4 the speed. This means that it would take around 8 hours to walk that distance, which means that they could easily do it in 1 day. Carl said that they would have 3 days at most before the balloons leaked, which means that there should be no trouble reaching the falls. Also, why do Carl and Russell go through the jungle when they could easily walk along the ridge? C. Why does Russell have to climb up the hose? It seems like it would be easier to tie the hose to a rock, lower the house down to ground level, enter the house, untie the hose, and float the house over to the falls. Although the film underwent many changes during development, the fundamental idea of isolation in the sky remained, and is the main theme of the film. Carl's final test is that he has to rescue Kevin and Russell and defeat Charles Muntz. Since they are in the middle of the Venezuelan jungle, Carl is the only one who can accomplish these actions. The only major coincidence is Carl and Russell running into Doug and Charles Muntz, which gets them into a lot of trouble even though they don't know it. This movie, especially the relationship between Carl and Russell, took inspiration from stories such as Casablanca and A Christmas Carol, which depict men losing something important and then regaining purpose. This movie has a very clear target demographic, which consists of older people who have been unable to accomplish what they dreamed about when they were younger. Carl escapes to Paradise Falls in his house, discovers that Russell has gone with him. But why would Russell do that? All he wants to do is earn his Assisting the Elderly badge, and there are much easier ways to do that.